Exulansis. You went through something. A breakup that rewired you. A trip that changed how you see the world. A loss that nobody around you seemed to fully understand. And at first you tried to explain it. You talked about it. You reached for the right words. And people nodded politely. Or they said, "Oh yeah, I get that." But you could tell they didn't, not really. So slowly, quietly, you stopped trying. You filed that experience away somewhere internal and just moved on. That's called exulansis. The tendency to give up trying to talk about an experience because people are unable to relate to it. The experience doesn't disappear, it just becomes private. And over time, even the memory starts to feel slightly mythical, like something that happened to a different version of you. The painful part isn't that nobody understood, it's that you stopped offering it. Adronitis. You meet someone, a new friend, a potential partner, a colleague you immediately click with. And there's this frustration underneath the excitement because you're in the early stages, the small talk, the surface stuff. You know there's a whole person in there, layers, contradictions, history. And you want access to all of it immediately, but that's not how it works. Intimacy has a speed limit. You have to earn it slowly, over months, sometimes years. Adronitis is the frustration with how long it takes to get to know someone, spending the first few weeks chatting in their psychological entryway, with each subsequent conversation like entering a different room, each a little closer to the center of the house, wishing instead that you could start at the center and work your way out, exchanging your deepest secrets first, before easing into casualness. Some of the most important relationships in your life are being held behind this slow door right now. Jouska. There's a conversation happening inside your head right now. Maybe it's the perfect response to something someone said to you last week. Maybe it's a confrontation you've been rehearsing for months. Maybe it's something you wish you'd said or something you're terrified to say. The internal version of this conversation is flawless. You're articulate, composed, devastating, or compassionate depending on what's needed. The real version, if it ever happens, will be messier. And you know that, which somehow makes you rehearse it more. Jouska is a hypothetical conversation that you compulsively play out in your head, a crisp analysis, a devastating comeback, a cathartic heart-to-heart, which serves as a kind of psychological batting cage that feels far more satisfying than the small ball strategies of everyday life. The irony is that the more you replay it, the more the real conversation gets postponed. Your brain is solving a problem it keeps preventing you from actually solving. Rückkehrunruhe. You come back from somewhere that mattered, a holiday, a trip abroad, a long weekend that actually worked. You're back in your room, your routine, your life, and something is wrong, not dramatically wrong, but wrong in a quiet, unsettling way. While you were there, the experience felt permanent, like you were building something. Now you're back, and instead of keeping what you found, you can feel it dissolving. The clarity you had, the version of yourself that existed over there, it's fading. Fast. Rückkehrunruhe is the feeling of returning home after an immersive trip, only to find it fading rapidly from your awareness. You desperately want to hold on to it, but the more you grip, the faster it slips. Within 2 weeks, most people report the trip feels like it happened to someone else. The feeling isn't just nostalgia. It's grief for a version of yourself you briefly became and couldn't bring home. Anecdoche. You're at dinner, a group chat, a family gathering. Everyone is talking. The conversation is lively, even enjoyable on the surface, but look closer. Nobody is actually responding to what the last person said. Everyone is waiting for their turn. Every yes totally is just a placeholder before they launch back into their own thing. You've been doing it too. We all have. Anecdoche is a conversation in which everyone is talking but nobody is listening. It's become the default mode of modern social interaction, especially online. Researchers studying conversation patterns have found that genuine reciprocal listening is increasingly rare, replaced by what communication scholars call parallel monologues. The loneliest you can feel isn't silence. It's being surrounded by noise and still not being heard. Altschmerz. You know what your problem is. You've known for years. Maybe it's the way you avoid conflict or how you self-sabotage when things get good. or the anxiety that shows up every Sunday night like a scheduled appointment. You've thought about it so much that thinking about it doesn't even feel productive anymore. It's like a piece of gum you've been chewing for so long it has no flavor left. The issue is still there, you've just exhausted every interesting angle on it. Altschmerz is the weariness with the same old issues you've always had, the same boring flaws and anxieties you've been gnawing on for years, which leaves them soggy and tasteless and inert, with nothing interesting left to think about. This is actually a documented psychological phenomenon. Therapists call it insight without change. You understand yourself perfectly, and it's doing almost nothing for you. Nodus Tollens. There's a specific kind of disorientation that doesn't come from a single bad event. It creeps in slowly. One day you're moving through your life, your job, your relationships, your plans, and something makes you stop. You look at where you are, you look at the thread of decisions that brought you here, and you realize this doesn't make sense as a story. Not because anything terrible happened, but because the narrative doesn't hold together the way you thought it would. You're in a chapter you don't recognize, in a plot you no longer follow. Nodus Tollens is the realization that the plot of your life doesn't make sense to you anymore. It's not a breakdown. It's more like a moment of narrative vertigo, when the story you've been telling yourself about who you are and where you're going suddenly doesn't feel coherent. Psychologists note this often precedes major growth. The confusion isn't the problem. It's the signal that you've outgrown the story you were living in. Here's what all of these feelings have in common. You thought they were just yours. Private, weird, too specific to be universal. But every single one of these words exists because enough people felt the exact same thing that someone had to build language around it. These untranslatable emotions aren't just linguistic curiosities, they enrich our understanding of the human experience, showing us that our emotional lives are far more nuanced and diverse than we often realize. The feelings you can't name are not signs that something is wrong with you. They're evidence of how fully you're alive.